When Zohran Mamdani took the oath as New York City's 112th mayor on January 1st, 2026, he brought with him something the city hadn't seen in decades, a clear, bold strategy to tackle the crushing cost of living that's been squeezing New Yorkers for years. Born in Uganda and raised in Queens, this 34-year-old democratic socialist didn't just promise change. He came with the detailed roadmap that experts are calling the most ambitious affordability agenda in the city's modern history. The five-point strategy that powered Mamdani's historic victory isn't just political rhetoric. It's a carefully crafted plan that addresses the daily struggles of millions of New Yorkers who've been priced out of their own city. From the taxi driver in Brooklyn who can barely afford his rent, to the single mother in the Bronx choosing between childcare and groceries, Mamdani's strategy speaks directly to the economic anxiety that's become the defining issue of our time. What makes this strategy particularly fascinating is how it builds on successful precedents while pushing boundaries that previous mayors wouldn't dare to touch. Each of these five pillars represents not just a policy proposal, but a fundamental shift in how city government can intervene in the market to protect working families. Let's dive into each component and understand how this young mayor plans to transform the most expensive city in America. The first pillar of Mamdani's strategy is perhaps the most immediately impactful, implementing a complete rent freeze on rent-stabilized apartments. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's actually one of the easiest policies for a mayor to execute. Here's how it works. The Rent Guidelines Board, which decides annual rent increases for over 2 million New Yorkers, is entirely appointed by the mayor. Under Eric Adams, this board allowed rents to spike by 9% in a single year, pushing countless families towards eviction. Mamdani's approach is refreshingly straightforward. Appoint board members who will freeze rents at current levels, providing immediate relief to nearly half the city's renters. The beauty of this strategy lies in its simplicity and speed. Unlike complex legislation that needs to wind through the city council, this can happen on day one of his administration. It's a perfect example of using existing municipal powers in ways that previous mayors simply chose not to. But the rent freeze is just the beginning. The second pillar focuses on dramatically expanding affordable housing construction, specifically building 200,000 new units of permanently affordable, union-built, rent-stabilized homes over the next decade. Now, you might think this sounds familiar, and you'd be right. Bill de Blasio made a similar promise back in 2014 and actually delivered on it. The problem was 200,000 units barely made a dent in the housing crisis. What makes Mamdani's approach different is the emphasis on permanent affordability and union labor. Too many previous affordable housing programs created units that eventually converted to market rate, defeating the purpose entirely. Mamdani's plan ensures these homes stay affordable forever while also guaranteeing good-paying construction jobs for New York workers. It's housing policy that doubles as an economic development and labor organizing.
The third pillar might sound unusual for a mayor's agenda, but it's brilliant in its simplicity. City-owned grocery stores. Mamdani plans to open 5 municipal grocery stores, one in each borough, to directly compete with corporate chains and drive down food prices across the city. This isn't some radical experiment. Cities around the world successfully operate public grocery stores, and the model has proven effective at keeping food costs reasonable for working families. Think about it this way. If the city can run hospitals, schools, and libraries, why not grocery stores? These municipal markets would focus on providing fresh, affordable food in neighborhoods that are often underserved by major chains. They'd also serve as a check on corporate price gouging, forcing private retailers to compete on price rather than simply extracting maximum profit from captive customers. The fourth pillar addresses one of the biggest financial burdens facing young families: childcare costs. Mamdani's universal childcare program would provide free care for all children from 6 weeks to 5 years old, at an estimated cost of $6 billion annually. That might sound expensive, but consider this. The average New York family spends over $20,000 per year on childcare, often forcing one parent out of the workforce entirely. This program would be funded through higher taxes on corporations and individuals earning over $1 million annually. It's not just about helping families save money, though that's certainly important. Universal childcare is economic development policy disguised as social policy. When parents don't have to choose between working and caring for their children, the entire economy benefits from increased productivity and participation. The fifth and final pillar ties everything together: fare-free public buses throughout the city. This might seem like a small thing compared to housing and childcare, but transportation costs add up quickly for working families. A monthly Metro card costs $132, which might not sound like much to wealthy New Yorkers, but represents a significant burden for families already struggling with rent and groceries. Free buses would provide immediate relief while also encouraging more people to use public transit, reducing traffic congestion and air pollution. Mamdani has already demonstrated this can work. As a state assemblyman, he helped secure funding for a successful fare-free bus pilot program. Scaling it citywide would make New York the largest city in America to offer free public transit. What's remarkable about this 5-point strategy is how each element reinforces the others. Rent freezes provide immediate relief, while affordable housing construction offers long-term solutions. Universal childcare frees up family budgets that can then benefit from lower food costs at municipal grocery stores. Free buses reduce transportation expenses, leaving more money for everything else. It's a comprehensive approach that recognizes how housing, food, childcare and transportation costs all compound to make life unaffordable for working families. Critics argue that these policies are too expensive or too radical for a city that depends on business investment and tourism. But Mamdani's team has done their homework on funding mechanisms, primarily through progressive taxation on corporations and high earners. They point out that the current system where working families spend 60, 70, even 80% of their income on basic necessities is unsustainable and economically inefficient.
The strategy also draws inspiration from successful models around the world and throughout American history. Vienna's social housing program houses 60% of the city's population in high-quality, affordable homes. Cities across Europe operate successful public transit systems and municipal services. Even in America, the early 20th century sewer socialist movement in Milwaukee showed how local governments could dramatically improve residents' quality of life through smart public investment. As Mayor Mamdani begins implementing this ambitious agenda, New York City finds itself at a crossroads. Will this 5-point strategy succeed in making the city affordable for working families again? Or will political and economic pressures force compromises that water down its impact? What's certain is that millions of New Yorkers are watching closely, hoping that finally someone in City Hall understands that government's job isn't just to manage decline, but to actively improve people's lives. The next 4 years will determine whether this bold experiment in municipal socialism can work in America's largest city, potentially setting a model for progressive governance across the country.